similar. The one with one talent, what we saw what happened there, he did not use it. So question is, are you a Christian with one talent, or are you a Christian with five talents or two talents? Remember, God didn't give them the same amount of talents. He gave them different um, amount of talent. And what he expected them to do basically was they wanted them to make profit with that. And the question is, how is it as stewards of God, manifold wisdom? And as you go through life, you're going to have a lot of opportunities. Money is going to come into your hands. You're going to have good jobs. You're going to have opportunities, especially in this country we live in. You're going to get a lot of good opportunities come to you. The question is not whether you're going to earn money. The question is, how would you honor God with what He has given you or what's going to come into your hands? And I think it's a good time to talk about it because as you start your career, as you grow in your career, as you walk through life, you're going to get a lot of stuff happens. So what I want to talk to you next is there are principles. What are those principles? There are seven principles we're going to talk about in which we can be good financial stewards or we can honor God with what He has given us. A lot of you are going to earn millions during your time in life over the next few years 10, 20, 15 years, if Jesus tarries, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. The question is, are you going to be a good steward? What principles would you live by or that will help you to be able to be a good steward? Like I said, there are seven of those principles we're going to look at. So let's look at the first principle. Principle number one is the principle of budgeting. Budgeting. If we're going to be good stewards of what God has given us, especially with relation to finance, you have to learn the principle of budgeting, understand how is it that we need to buy. The budget is not particularly a great thing people want to hear about, especially when you hear about every time the politicians are budgeting, people freak out, But in our own, it starts with our own personal life individually. If you can't live on budget, we live on a budget on maybe 100 pounds, or you can't live on budget on £2,000, then you're gonna have a problem when bigger amount of money comes in. So start from the little minute things. And let's just look at a couple of things and then we're going to talk about some of the tips on doing that. No, what's budgeting? When we say budgeting, what does that mean to you? This question to everyone, let me ask you, what does budgeting mean to you? Or what do you understand by budget? I'm sure some of you have done that in school, some of you have done it in different places. Yeah, anybody feel free? Tell us, what do you think budgeting is?
Probably planning how you use your money, your finances, like a planner.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Adasha. Yeah, absolutely. It's how budgeting is basically how am I going to use this resource of money that's coming to me? And we all do it, just that at times it's not done intentionally or proactively. So when we're talking about budgeting, yes, it's not a eureka or revolutionary thought, but it's about how you become more intentional about it, so you can get a handle of it. How many people have a budget? I'm sure you all do, but how many people have a budget?
Yes.
Yeah,
I do.
Oh, great stuff. So let's ask, what are some of the challenges? You all have budget, we all do, but question, what are some of the budget, some of the problems we have seen with this, or challenges, I would say, that we've seen with budgeting, and what are some of the solutions to that? And we're going to look at a couple of things I have around that. So principle number one is learning how to budget. Learning how to budget, that's principle number one. And then when you look at how do we do it properly. Remember, we're stewards and we want to bring honor to God. Just don't forget that at the back of your mind. In everything we do today, we're stewards. God has given us whatever we have does not belong to us. God has given it to us, and He wants us to manage it well and properly for Him. So, the question is, how do I bring honor to God through budgeting? Principle number one. how do we do that? What are some of the challenges we've seen? Let's have some discussion around that. What are some of the challenges we've seen with this, with budgeting, and what are some of the solutions to those challenges?
Personally, unexpected emergencies. So I've done my,
Okay, yeah.
and then an unexpected thing happens. It's family, or maybe something's happened to my car. It can be anything, and then I have to go over that budget. So
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's absolutely right. Unplanned and unforeseen things, just come up. Things you didn't plan for. You already have this money. You plan to do something, and then suddenly that just comes up. Yeah. Thank you. That's very practical. Didn't plan to do something, just come up. From nowhere. So what are some of the solutions around? What else? What other things do we have?
I say cost of living.
Cost of living.
Yeah,
Is
because
is that really okay? How does that affect budgeting though?
I think when you say cost of, because obviously the way you could budget as much as you want, but then when you see that the prices of things, household goods and gas, electricity is going up, the reality of it is, you have to adjust your budget to accommodate those price increases.
Okay.
So even though that's why usually some financial advisors will advise, okay, go outside and do your research on the best provider. They're not really telling you that on the basis of, just search for searching's sake, but try and find out a provider that falls within probably the budget that you set aside previously. So I think the cost of living does affect your budget, and then one has to be mindful of looking for providers that will provide the same service, but at a cost that is reasonably affordable to them.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Absolutely, that is spot on in terms of yes, your budget could be affected by. You said that you have inflation, a lot of things going on, the cost of things are all over the place. Yeah, all over the place. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna look at how we can handle that a bit later. But yes, that's absolutely right in terms of the cost of living can affect what is it you have available. What else? Anyone else? Okay, so these are some of the things. Thanks for sharing those thoughts around what budgeting is, and the kind of things, the challenges around that. I would like to say, it's not as if most times you probably have something, you have an idea in your head, really, in terms of this is what I want to do. But what you really want to do is you want to put it down on pen and paper, or in these days, we put it maybe electronically on apps and things like that. But let's look at that principle number one. These are some of the things I will do that effectively. Now, the first thing I said there is, as a budgeting, consider that's not a rule, by the way. The first thing about the 50, 30, and 20 rules, that is just a kind of general set of guideline in terms of things that your needs. When we say need, what is a need? What's the difference between need and a want?
Need is essential, want is optional.
Thank you. So need is absolutely, like you're talking about gas, electricity, that is a need. I mean, like now, you need to put on your gas, you need to cook. Transportation, you have to take things to work. So what you do is you look at your needs. Those needs, hopefully, you want to make sure that maybe 50% of your income, what's coming, your intake goes towards that. Now, and then 30% of some things like your wants, something that they're not critical for you, but there are things you want to that needs to be addressed. And then of course then 20% around savings, givings. We're going to explore a bit on those things, those principles. But those are key. So as your money is coming in your mind, so it's about planning really effectively to say, when I'm getting paid, this is how I want to distribute my money. Like I said, give and take, because it all depends on where you are on your continuum. Some people maybe don't earn enough money. We're going to look at that a bit later. The question is, how can I make sure that I can address 50% into that? Like I said, this is not a set rule, by the way. So we're not saying it has to be this way. You may even get to a point whereby your needs, 20%, 30% of your income may be able to address your needs. That you may get to, God may bless you to that point, but you start from somewhere, right? This is just like a starting point. Then you start planning, and in some cases, you may even find that your needs may even be taken up to 60, 70% because you haven't got enough, But then these are things you need to work on. The key thing around there is about planning. You see, we talked about budgeting, so it doesn't mean that you don't do that today, but what it means is you need to be more proactive in terms of before the money lands in your pocket or in your bank account, plan how you're going to spend it. If you don't plan it, you know what's going to happen. Something is going to come and take that money away. There's always something that is going to come up. So if you didn't plan to do some things and it comes up, then what you're going to find out, you're going to end up spending the money anywhere. But if you are planned properly ahead of your payday or when the money comes into your account, what you then do is you now begin to distribute the money into those different things. Now, there are many ways of doing this. We're going to look at how you can effectively distribute that. And I'll tell you what I do. For instance, I have what I call, these days it's very easy to open a number of accounts. I have a bills account, for instance. So all my bills come from one account. So the 50% I was talking about goes into that account. So anything like direct, and these days direct debits is a lot more cheaper. Most companies, because they don't want the hassle of chasing you all over the place, your mobile phone calling you and your car insurance calling you. They don't want all that hassle. So if you're paying by DD, they will give you some concession. You pay less. So you have an account that all your DD goes out from and where you've already planned. And that's quite key. And you want to have another account that deals with that. And your savings and your giving, we're going to come to that later. That's also important in terms of when that money comes in, what you do with the money. But you're going to look at these steps, 6 steps here we talked about. We're going to look at that just using this is principle number 1 around how you manage that properly. So there are a number of things you can do. You can have different accounts. For your savings, you can have what you call automation. You can automate it these days, that every time your money comes in, 10% goes to a specific account. We're going to talk about what kind of savings is available. And then you're going to look at that. And these are some of the ways you can bring glory to God and God can be glorified. So we're saying that with your money or with the finances, what we're saying here is be intentional. Be very intentional about it. That means you plan before the money lands in your account. If you don't plan before it lands, you know what's going to happen? You end up spending it on something you didn't plan to spend it on. That's because you just haven't had the plan. So, but if you already plan to say, generally, you take them with either a sheet of paper or your pen, or you look at your spreadsheet, or you look at there are a lot of apps these days. There's YNAB, there's Mint, there's Emma, there are all kinds of apps these days. That every dollar is another app that helps you to do a lot of planning. So you do a lot of planning, and the money comes, you know how much you're spending towards gas, how much you're spending towards electricity, how much goes to food, how much goes to fuel, how much goes to your, all that is all planned on paper. So you know exactly how much needs to go to what. And those things are needs, those things are wants, and then based on that, you're able to distribute accurately what comes into you. And those are the key principles around that. So let's look at the first thing is, number 1, to do this effectively, you need to track you need to track what's coming in and what's going out. That means you need to know, for instance, how much am I spending on food, on petrol, for instance, on phone. All that you need to know, because if you don't know, it's difficult to budget, right? So you need to know exactly what it is. It may not be the exact figure, but at least to some degree. And the way to do that is look at your bank accounts or wherever you're using expending this over the last 1 to 3 months. You give you a good idea to say, generally speaking, I spend about X amount on bills, on this and that, and that's critical for you to know. Because without that, you can't plan in isolation. So you have a general idea in terms of what that is. I have some spreadsheet or whatever I can show you how that works, and the apps as well. I also use app for some of this stuff. So then expenses in terms of what's coming in, how much you're paid at work, or or your parents give you or whatever, how much comes in and you know how much you spend. Number 2 is we talked about what's the difference between needs and want. Needs is if we're paying some kind of bills, you have to pay the bills. If you don't pay the bills, they're going to take away the service from you. So you need to understand what are those needs and what are wants. Where people get into trouble is when you don't differentiate between these two. You then get into a situation whereby they're taking away what you should have. Then the third is you need to allocate your savings and giving. So let's talk about the difference. When we talk about giving, we're still going to talk a bit more. I'll talk a bit more about giving in a short while, or generosity. So what are the kind of givings we have? What do you give? Where do you give? And what are the types of givings?
Your tithe?
You give your tithes, which is 10% of your tithes. That's what God's giving us everything. So it's out of all the abundance will bring it. I know at times some people struggle to do that, but if you don't start, you always find it difficult. If you can't give something on a small amount you're earning. When you earn millions, you're going to have problem giving. So you need to begin to learn to do that. It's a discipline. It's not easy, but something we need to do, because everything belongs to God, and God through that opens more favor for us. So we're able to do more things with what He gives us. What other givings do we have? What other areas do we give?
There's the Thanksgiving seed.
Seeds.
Personally do anyway, yeah, like monthly.
All right.
Thanksgiving seed, and then as the Spirit leads me, I give money as whenever to whoever as the Lord leads me. So
as God leads us, you give. That's generosity. About being generous. Yeah, go on. We're listening to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically, for me, it's just tithing, Thanksgiving, and just to people, anyone, and as just God leads me. It could be family, could be friends, it could be a stranger. So.
All right, okay. All right, as God leads you to give. Yes. And then setting goals as well, realistic goals around. When we say goals, I'm talking about financial goals now, because if you don't set goals, you're not going to be able to get to that. So you need to look at that. We're going to look at some of the way in which you plan for the future through your finances as well. And constantly you need to review them, like I think somebody said earlier, it's about looking at your inflation, maybe eating into some of those stuff, or you may find yourself now in a situation whereby the cost of living is rising and things. So you need to review it. At times we need to allocate more money or reduce more money, or at times you can just shop around and find out what's the best thing to do. How many people know this guy? I think Martin Lewis, money saving expert. Have you heard of him before?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's got a very good site, where he looks at the number of deals and things like that. So at times when you're coming to, as a matter of course, regularly, maybe when you're coming to the end of a survey, the end of the year, just kind of shop around, so maybe you get a better deal. In most cases, we don't tend to do that, but then just look around. Maybe you're able to get some more money for your to put into your budget and do more things and stuff like that. So that's something I want to encourage you to do. And also for especially for a lot of people here, you want to look at some of the budgeting tools like the apps that helps you to do this as well. I think the power of all this is to automate as much as you can. Initially, you may do a bit of tinkering, just setting up the system, all that. But once the system is set up and it's automated, it makes your life much, much easier, because you're intentional about it. Then periodically you review it. And that's how we become good managers of what God has given us, financially speaking. You're looking at your budget, you're looking at how it's going to work. And then with that, then I can plan, I want to do this, I want to do that in the future. I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, for those who are getting to thinking, I'm going to get married in such and such time. Now you begin to see, what money can you begin to allocate. And even if you're not doing that, maybe you want to do some other, maybe business and some other aspect of things. These are things you now begin to plan. But your budget becomes the tool for doing that. Do you know how the government actually manage economy? One of the mechanisms for managing economy, for those of you who have done economic studies and all that kind. You know how they manage it? One of the tools is is they use the budget to manage the economy. That's one of the ways they do that. They use that, and it's key for you. So what God has given you, you're using your budget to manage that. So your budget is, you're saying the money where it can go to, where it should go to, and what it should be used for. That's what your budget is being used for. So that's why it's important for you to have a budget. Well, let me ask you a question. If you earn money and you are not intentional about it, and you don't know what's allocated where, what do you think is likely going to happen? What will be the result of that? You earn money, £2,000, £3,000 or £10,000. Let's even say £10,000, and you don't know where your money is coming or going to. What do you think will be the result of that?
Mismanagement.
Thank you, sir. Mismanagement, absolutely. Because you just buy something, at will. Oh, I feel like buying this, oh, I see that, I buy the latest thing and whatever, because you don't really know what's coming and going. It's not because you haven't got the money. So it's not about how much you earn. It's how you manage what you earn. And if you don't manage, and this is the principle of God in the Bible. It's the Bible, God, it says something like, he that has more will be given what? More will be given to them. That's not amazing. That God will say that. You want to say that's not like God, but that's exactly how God works. The Bible says, he that has little, even the little he has, it will be taken away from him. You know why? Because that person doesn't know how to manage whatever they have. And so God will always test us. God will always test you to see where you are, whether you're ready to go to the next level. And the way, principle number one to manage that is through budgeting. So that's very fundamental. We do it, the government does it, and everybody, and that's how we manage it. And that the more you can manage what you have, the better you're going to get. Some people, their problem is not because they don't have money, it's because they don't manage what they have. So principle number one, let's go on to the next one. The next one is debt. What is debt? And what are the types of debt? When we say debt, so principle number two is managing debt. And let's look at that. What is debt, and what are the types of debts we have around us?
Debt is whatever you're owing, is it?
Whatever you're owing.
Yeah, it could be a mortgage, it could be rent, it could be credit card, it could be car finance.
Thank you. So anything you're owing, could be long time, short time, wherever. Those things are debt. And, like you're rightly saying, credit card, student loan, mortgage, there are all kinds of things. Some are short-term, long-term debt and things like that. So that's principle number two, is how then do you manage? Why is debt a problem? Why is it, if it's a problem, why is it a problem? Why do you need to manage debt?
Because if you sorry, after you.
No, carry on.
I was going to say, if you don't manage your debt, then you risk falling into financial ruin. So you're never on top of things. You're always playing catch up.
Thank you. You're always playing catch up. You're never in control. What else? Is that not a great thing? Why you need to manage it?
Because having debt causes a lot of stress. Like, I think when people are not able to manage their debt, sometimes whoever has loaned the money to you will send it to like debt collectors, and you have them constantly approaching the person, which can cause a lot of emotional stress and stuff.
Thank you. It causes all kinds of stress, and that's a big one. People are stressed out. Some people are working, 2, 3, 4 jobs, not because they want to particularly, but because, the debtor is always sending you letters, they're hassling you, they're visiting you, they're doing everything they can to harass you, basically. So you can't even sleep at night. And for young people, as you're beginning to start, some of you, wherever you are in the stage of your career, you need to be very conscious of this and make sure you don't fall into a trap whereby you live, from one debt to another. Okay, yeah. Let me ask another question. How do people fall into debt?
Mismanagement of finances.
Sorry, say that again.
Mismanagement of finances. So when you're using your finances for maybe the unnecessary things, focusing on the wrong things, I mean, we're all guilty of it, where we can probably buy clothes that we don't need, and yet we've got bills to pay. So and people end up falling into debt.
So thank you, Dashi. That's very, very important. You see when we're talking about budgeting, you see how it ties into this, and you're gonna see how they all tie together. It's basically people going into things maybe they're not ready to go into, buying things they don't have the money to pay, all kinds of stuff like that. And at times, it's just we're just being so ambitious to say, oh, well, I will do this, and we get into a situation now where we go into debt and we get all kinds of stuff which we're not even prepared to do. It doesn't mean there are some kind of things that when it comes to mortgages and all that, because obviously for you to buy £400,000 worth of property and things like that, it would be a case of you would have worked to put that together. But again, you can use some wisdom to do that in terms of once you've done your proper planning, you can then begin to see how you manage that. But you can see how budgeting helps that. And that's quite critical. So we see debt, and God is not just about managing, he's managing and eliminating them, especially for those debts that that are not necessary for you to have. So it's about management or elimination, really.
But
so it's a key thing.
can I say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What about good debt? Some debts are good.
Okay.
Which you can actually use to, to kind of plan your finance. Well, maybe they might not be, maybe that level is too much for them, but there's some debts that are good.
Yeah,
I 100%, sir. I agree. So what Pastor is saying, which is very, very, very true these days. I talked about buying property. If you were going to buy property, not to make it complex, you probably need 400,000, 500,000, especially if you live around this part of the world. You may not have that kind of savings, right? But if you take out a mortgage, which is a debt really, and what it is over a period of time, what you have is your property appreciates, and at the same time you're able to pay that at a very low interest rate over a period of time. So that's good debt. And also there are people who are doing some kind of businesses and things like that. You could actually, good debt basically are debts in which that they're not just spend on lifestyle, they're not that are spent on just lavishing on things, but they are debts in which you can get back returns and stuff. And there are something debts in which you spend like credit card, for instance, you go and buy something that you cannot afford. Those kind of things, you're actually losing money on them. But you want to buy a car. Let's give a good example of this. If you are going to borrow, very high purchase cars, the moment you drive that car off, what you've done is you've spent so much money on that car, and the value's gone down. So really, there's more of liability. So maybe the way to put it is to say good debts are what brings assets and increase, and then bad debts are what brings liability to you.
Can I just add something? Like if you, for instance, if maybe when you come to issue of the credit cards, well, if you have a good credit record, you find that there are some companies that maybe like Tesco and all that, they can give you an exposure and say, okay, on this card, right, you for the next 24 months, which is 2 years or 3 years, you don't pay anything, right? You don't pay anything on it. So you have access to that cash. Maybe it's a 5,000 or 10,000 pounds free for 3 years. So it's a debt, but you can actually use that to now invest it on something that can now be bringing income to you. At the end of the day, you pay their money back, you make money from that. So that's an example of a good debt.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a very good example. Thank you.
Sorry, sir. I want to raise something up. Thank God it's an open discussion. I wanted to add something to that. So with regards to this good debts, I mean, I've seen some situations, even some friends of mine debt is good, but there's some who would rather avoid it altogether if they can. And why they do that is, for example, your credit score. Now, growing up, you've been told, oh, you need to get things like credit cards so you can build your credit score so the providers can see how well you manage your finance.
Yeah.
But the problem is some of those, because people are not really educated properly on which credit cards to go for, they just feel they need to go for any credit card. And then you realize that those credit cards, over time, the interest starts going up. And then that good debt becomes, it becomes a bone in the neck. So also I'm a bit wary of when there's a mention of good debt and bad debt. I personally, I just think debt is debt, isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
Some,
Okay.
I disagree, because some debts it's an investment. You can buy a property and in 10 years' time it's increased in value in 100,000. So that's a good debt, because you're owing, but you're making money from it. So I don't agree that all debts are bad.
I think it's everything you need to put in context, and you look at it either way. We're always obviously talking from experiences and also some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Let me give an example in terms of what our brother said around the credit card, which is actually a very legitimate point in terms of if that individual had gone to get a card. Most of the people will give you those kind of card anyway. The Bible will be saying 40-something% interest. That's what they give you. But generally, are credit cards bad? The answer is no, if you can afford to use and pay them off. So in the general rule around credit card is somebody gets a credit card, use it at the end of the month, because there are some kind of this sort of cards, you have the money to pay, right? But what you're doing is at the end of the month, make sure you pay off the card completely. But where people run into problem is the moment it comes to the end of the month and you don't pay it off, then you're going to have to pay high interest. And over a period of time, you know what's going to happen? It's going to balloon and becomes a real issue, especially if people are not disciplined around these sort of things. And that's why the planning is a key thing around sitting down to say, what exactly, what is coming in, what's going out, how much money am I owing, how much money is coming into me. If we don't do that proper analysis and you just get a card or something, then it becomes a real problem. You find out that, if you can't pay and it begins to grow, then it becomes a real issue. I can agree with you if you see that, look, money coming in, I'm not disciplined enough to pay off. I'm not disciplined enough to manage these things. Then it's best not to have it at all. But if you can manage that, then I think you have some advantage. Even for credit scoring, for instance, you know that if you have a good credit rating, what tends to happen is the money generally you get and some of the loans and some of the facilities are much, much less. How much, for instance, if you go even for things like gas and electricity, now they do a credit scoring. If you have a better credit score, the actual amount they're going to give you is going to be, they're going to charge will be less compared to somebody who has very bad credit. And that's why, you had all this about pay meters, and I think that's changing now, where you have to pay meters and people would now pay by a direct debit. If you had a bad credit in those days, they're not going to give you direct debit. They're just actually going to get what's the name? This key stuff. But now I know that's all changing now. So yeah, I can see where that is. If it's an investment and you're disciplined and you can manage that, you're probably finding that debt can work for you in that situation. But if it is something that you are not able to manage and the short term and high interest debt, there's a real danger, like it's been said, that somebody can fall into default and becomes a real problem.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? Is it the starting point when it comes to your what do you call it now? Your credit rating, right? For you to have a good credit rating, you must have a credit card. I'll tell you why. When you have a credit card and you pay as at when due, okay? Maybe I've got a credit card now, and it's about just £500, and I go to Tesco to fill my car for £40. I use that card, and the second day or the same day, I pay the £40 back to the same account, and I do that often. Now, to the credit lender, they see you as somebody that is good, that they can trust because you are paying back. Now you find that what they do now is that they will increase it from time to time. As they're increasing it, the level of exposure will increase, and also your credit rating also will be increasing. So just like what Pastor Ike said, the moment your credit rating increases, right? You find that even anything they're going to give to you will be at a lower rate. Even want to borrow money, borrow anything, the interest will be very low because they believe that you are proving to them you are a good steward when it comes to that money. You will pay back and you pay back on time. So it will get to a time as you continue to build that, when they see that you are building it, and will get a time, they will send you a letter. They will send you, say, oh, you see it on your screen. Oh, there is an offer for you, an offer of this at a very low rate. It could be a loan, an offer for you for the same credit card, maybe about £5,000, £10,000, which you can now pay. You pay 0% for the next 2 years. You see, this is a strategy. You know, all the people that are rich today, the rich people, if you ask them, they use other people's money, right? They don't use their money. They use other people's money to do their businesses. And that's why they're very rich. So that is the starting point. Your credit rating must be good. You have to, it's like you must treat your credit rating as a baby, right? It must be good. And once your credit rating is good, you find that a lot of offers will come, and you begin to now to use their money to do other things, right? And that from there, you can get, passive income coming to you while you are also servicing their own money. So in other words, you are using their money to make money for yourself. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I like this because we're having a lot of discussion here, which is quite good, and these are practical stuff, which, so generally, obviously, I know that some people are maybe just starting the career, beginning, whatever. I suppose what we're trying to say is that don't get yourself into a situation where, like somebody rightly said, that, becomes a stressful situation whereby you have debt, you're carrying debt that you can't really service, you can't pay, you can't, it's beginning to understand what debt can do for you, both good and bad, and then begin to see how you manage that. There are two things I want to talk about here. There are two strategies in paying that off. There's what you call the snowball method. That's the way you list your debt from the highest to the lowest, and you start attacking them from the least to the lowest. And what that does is that method helps you to begin to see some quick wins, and you begin to see that, oh, once you knock that off, then the next one, it kind of gives you, that confidence that, oh, you're making progress. The second one is what you call the avalanche method. That one is looking at the one with the highest interest. You're working on that to bring down the, to until you get to the one with the lowest interest. Any of those two, does it have any advantage or not? It all depends on your personality. Some people want to see some things happening and working quickly. So they start from lowest to the highest, and they can actually see they feel they're getting some traction. While the avalanche, you feel that you are more of a mathematical person. You're seeing actually the highest interest is going down, and then you're not beginning to go. So those are the key things I wanted to point out on that. And I want to just understand what debt is, and how that can, and throughout life, you're going to find out whether mortgage, whether in one way or other, you're always going to have that, especially in our community today, or not community, in our society, it is debt driven. That's why do you think government will give you so much money? They give you so much money and pump it so much so that people can get this money so that, you can begin to spend and splash and all that. Unfortunately, because of greed and because of lack of control and discipline, people can take on more than they can chew. And as a result of that, you find that they're now working day and night and all that kind of stuff just to pay off debt. So we just need to be wary of that. Principle number 2 is about managing debt so that you don't have the detriment of that. So it's important that we understand that. Principle number 3, quickly, I want to talk about the principle of saving. What is saving? And what are the ways in which we save? But generally for these, we'll talk about 2 types of saving. Saving. When we say saving, what do we mean? Who can help us?
Putting money aside that you don't use, like you just put aside for future uses.
Okay, we'll put money aside. Thank you. That's remember we look at that. We started with budgeting. We said your needs, your wants, and savings. So savings is putting money aside either for short-term or long-term purposes. What are the examples of savings we have? Generally, we're going to look at long-term. Generally, when you talk about short-term savings for short-term things you want to do, long-term savings are something that's much more different in terms of we'll call them investment. But let's look at it generally. What are the sort of examples we have with this? Have you heard of ISA before?
Yes.
What is ISA?
It's a tax-free savings account.
Okay, thank you. Tax-free savings account. So what the government have done, the government is saying, we want you to start saving because they know, like we said, we're consumers, right? People like to buy things, like to consume things. And generally, what we then tend to do is we then just spend and spend and spend. So money is coming in, but with the budgeting stuff we talked about, people don't have budgets, or people don't have, they're not that they don't have, they're not intentional about it, so they don't save anything. So what tends to happen is we just tend just to go on. So the third principle of financial stewardship is the principle of saving. And why is saving important?
To prepare for a rainy day?
Prepare for a rainy day, because there's going to be a rainy day. It's going to come. I think a few days ago, I was reading about Joseph, where the Bible speaks about in this season where, you know, he had his dream and spoke to Pharaoh about it, and he had that interpretation. The Bible said that during the time when there was abundance, that there was so much abundance, everything he was doing, you know, the ground was just giving so much increase and everything else. And those are times of abundance. But what Joseph was doing was that rather than then consuming everything in Egypt, they were saving that for the times when there will be, for the lean years. Years of scarcity or famine. And that's the thing. In our lives, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have times when you're going to have abundance of stuff. You know, you're going to be earning so much money. If care is not taken, you think you're a superman or superwoman, and things are going to continue like that. But his life is in seasons and cycles. It's the learning how you save for what you call the raining days, the days that's to come. And generally, there's like I said, we're going to come to investment in a few minutes. There's long-term and short-term set of savings. The short-term savings are things like ISA. So the government wants us to save some money, and the money we're saving, that money is then used for different things. So so you can have when you have your savings account, so you can have on your ISA account, cash ISA is the first one. So you can have your cash ISA where you can put your money into that, and then that's a general thing. And you can have other types of savings. So the thing I want you to do about it is think about automation. Like I said this at the beginning. While we're saying this, the good thing we have now, automate your savings as much as possible. So what we're saying is, say for instance, we said, what percentage should you go into savings and giving? About 20%. So automate it so that once the money lands in your account, automatically it goes into your ISA account. Everybody can set up an ISA account. And if you're young, you can also set up what's called the junior ISA. Generally, before your 18th birthday, if you don't have a junior ISA, I want to encourage you to try to get one. That means you can use that account to buy a house much later when you're ready, or that account can be used for other things like also pensions and things like that. So generally, try to automate it. So money is coming to your account, you're moving it into that. That's that's cash free, and that's tax-free savings. So you can do that. So that's important for us. So the savings is very important. Then there's also what you call the emergency fund. Emergency fund generally is to say things would happen, right? So can you have, if you lose your job or something happens, I know this generally maybe doesn't apply to you, but generally as you grow older, as you do things, if you lose money, how would you be able to pay those bills and the things that your needs? So you need to generally have every 3 to 6 months, money you have saved. It is not going to happen overnight, right? But generally, as you begin to put a bit of money together, you're going to be able to have that for the future. So you then have that. Should you lose your job, if something happen before you find that next job, while relying on friends, families, and dad and mom, whoever or your friends, now begin to look at the money you've saved. That would then you'll be able to use that for that. So that's what the savings really helps you to do. Any question there? That's principle number 3. I know we've done about an hour already. I'm going to whisk through the rest now so we can get to the other ones. So principle number 3 is saving. Any question, anyone? Right. Principle number 4. That's so there's a longer term savings which we call investment.
Okay.
Yes, CJ.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Okay. What if one doesn't have enough to save?
Okay. Give us an example, scenario of that. Generally, give us an example of how that would work. You don't have enough to save. How?
Or enough. Take for example, someone earns, for example, £8,200 a month.
Okay.
But his expenses for that month is about maybe 1,000, maybe 170 on average.
Yeah.
How would that person have to navigate, automated savings and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will answer that, but I want someone to speak to that first, and I will answer that question. Yeah, that's a very great question. A lot of people are in that situation, by the way, where we're saying give, they don't have money to give. We're saying save, they haven't got the money to even pay their bills, talk about saving. So would anybody like to speak to that? You're earning 1,200 and your total sort of outgoing is you have maybe 1,100 or 1,020. How would you navigate that? Let's talk about it. This is a practical thing.
I would say from my hand, change of lifestyle. It could be accommodation, stuff like that. It could be that it's your accommodation that is taking away all the funds. So you could change that. You could get a shared house, shared apartment. I'm sure that would help to reduce the expenses as well.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I will look at expenses. Yeah. That's thank you, man. Any other contribution? Let's look about. These are practical things, and this is happening to a lot of people. What would you do if your the amount of money that's coming in is less than what you actually need? What would you do?
I say you're probably best to readjust your finance.
Okay.
So you need to look at where's the most of your expenses going out, and then some providers tend to give customers an option. Okay, they ask you what's your affordability like. Okay. So ideally, what you might want to do is look at what's the most expense you have going out from a particular provider. Probably think about giving them a call and saying, okay, is it possible to readjust this? That some of them offer those options, but sometimes my advice would be, just look at your look at your expenses, try and get in touch with the provider, see if you can readjust what you can. It might take longer to clear off if you have something, but at least that way that will free up more cash for you.
Thank you. That's a very good response as well. Let's have one more response before I speak to it.
My own humble opinion, I think if you are not earning enough, I think the best thing is to just get another job or get additional source of income to add to that to the income stream, because there are some, especially if you are living in London, there are some income you have that no matter how you cut it, do not tally. You cut and cut and cut, and then you start living a life that doesn't look good. So at the end of everything, I think it's still best if you add additional source of income or get another job.
All right. Thank you, Gabriel. I didn't. Anyone wants to speak more before we just close that off? Those are practical things. Just generally, when you look at the money coming in, there are two ways. There are two ways in which you can increase. Either you cut the expenses, or you increase what's the income. Those are the two things. You need to look at that practically. So look at the expenses. Remember we said budgeting, tracking, look at what you're spending money on. Question is, realistically, can you cut down on some of the stuff? Whether you're shopping right and going to M&S, can you go to Aldi You know, can you go to, that's just a joke anyway. But look at the expenses generally. What's going out? Is there something you can do about what's going out? Right? Where like someone talked about where you're living. Yes, can you live somewhere cheaper? That's an option. You can look at that. So you look at all of those things. Look at the number of options in terms of what's going on. Now, if you now get to a point whereby that's as far as you can go, of course, there's a second part of that is while you're doing that, you're also looking at, can I increase what I'm doing? Maybe change the job and get something better, or do something. That's one of the principles we're going to look at later is additional streams of income. The next thing you can do is, apart from that, can we then go and increase what is coming in? Can you do a side gig? Can you say side job? I can tell you I've done all kinds of stuff. There was a time I used to work as I work in the office, right? And I need additional source of income. You know what I'll do? Weekends, I'll go and deliver pizza. I do Amazon delivery in the mornings. I'll just go and do all that. Then in the evenings, when I come back from work, I change and I'll go to Pizza Hut. I'll go and work, get extra income. I was making additional just £150 a week, but that went a long way for me to be able to meet up my expenses and things I was doing then. And then there were times I do stuff online. I started doing Amazon. I did a lot of business Amazon. I'll go to weekends like this. I'll go to car boot sales. I pick up some stuff, advertise it online, I sell it. So the question is, can you increase your income by side gigs? Like I said, we're going to talk a bit about this later. By doing some side gigs, by doing some additional stuff, investing in things, just those kind of stuff, so that you then begin to see that you are not comfortable to be able to start saving and that kind of stuff. And it's not just about saving, really. It's about having enough sort of your needs, you can pay for your needs. Then some of your wants, you can take care of those. And then when it comes to savings and giving, because for me, I think giving generosity is very key. If you're not generous, you don't give. Bible says, God says, I open the windows of heaven so that, pour out a blessing that you will not be able to contain them. That means that God's favor, and it's an open door that comes from giving. So all of those things. So the way to do that is look at the expenses and then look at how you can look at your income. What can you do with the both ends? Either manage expenses, cut it down. And for expenses, you need to constantly do that anyway, because businesses do this all the time. They're also looking at the operating costs. How much can we reduce the amount of money that we're spending? The business are always doing that. They'll cut down all the expenses to things. And some of us, you need to do that. And constantly look at that, proactively looking at, can I reduce this? Can I shop around? Can I get better deals? Can I, all of those things, you can do that. Then also, can I increase my income? What else can I do? Can I take up additional job? Can I do a side gigs? Can I change my job? Can I invest in myself so I can become better? They can pay me more. So these are things you need to do. And I think that's CG, I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, thank you very much for.
Yeah, and also is to say, we may say maybe your target could be, I want to be saving 10% of my income, but you don't have to wait to 10%. Start with 1%, right? Start saving. Just the idea is to build a habit that you're doing this. And I want to say to everyone that's here today, build a habit. Just start it. Every time you get paid. It was The Richest Man in Babylon. That's a good book, by the way. If you've not read it, read that book. It says, everything I earn, a portion of it is for me to keep. A portion of that is for me to keep. In some circles, we say pay yourself first. I would say pay God first. Where you're not paying God, actually give to God first is what I would say. They say pay yourself first. It's about, if you read Robert Kiyosaki, the man that wrote Poor Dad, Rich Dad Poor Dad, he wrote extensively about things like that, about making sure you keep part of that and how they grew their wealth through those kind of mechanisms. Always make a habit of saving something, even if it's 1% or £5. Just, it's a habit. Just create it and put something aside every month. You'll be amazed at how much these things can grow. I'll give you an example of a friend of mine. He and his wife used to save £50 every month. So they do that every month. They save £50 on account. They forgot about it. And there was, during I think Katrina in America, the properties and things in all those areas went so down that some properties were being sold like $10,000. It was the money that they have saved that they used. They went to America, they bought that property, and that property eventually they sold it, for hundreds of and tens of thousands eventually when they did sell it. So what I'm saying is you never know where this can take you. And also there are opportunities that are always going to come. If opportunities come and you don't have the money, guess what? You have nothing to work for on. So just starts, even if it's £1, £2, whatever amount, every time money comes in, give what belongs to Caesar to Caesar, what belongs to God to God. Make sure you do what you need to do as far as God is concerned. And then for your own perspective, make sure you put something aside for yourself. And then that helps you. Okay, let's move to principle number 4. I'm going to be quicker now because of time. Principle number 4 is investment. What is investment? What's investment? Somebody tell us. Anyone?
Making a profit from what you own, what you have. I don't know, like.
Okay, making profit from what you have. Yes, can be. What else?
You're putting money aside with your aim of making a profit?
Yeah, I'm putting the money aside with him of making profit. That it can be investment, and investment is also planning really more for the future. It's more about that, thinking more futuristically, not just now. So that can come in different forms and things like that. So when you talk about investment, you're thinking about now, not just the short-term, immediate thing. You're looking at long-term to say, long-term, I want to start planning. So that's the reason why you invest. You invest because of long term. You're thinking about, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, longer term, really. We talked about a number of things. So you'll begin to think about that. And investment starts from, let me say quickly, from yourself. The biggest thing I invest in is you as a person. So you're thinking about yourself. You're planning for your life in terms of, in 5 years, 10 years, the things you want to do. And you want to start early, so first you invest in yourself in terms of your knowledge, your know-how. You want to become a better person. Now education is much more different from what it used to be. Before, you may have to go to school. You can still do that now. There's nothing wrong with that. But then investment is what you put into yourself, your mind, your spirituality. All of that is important. So you start investing. You now begin to think about setting long-term goals, short-term, long-term goals. To say short-term, generally maybe 1 to 3 years, maybe car you want to buy, some things you want to do. Start thinking about those. And then, of course, start thinking all along the line of maybe longer time, 10 years, maybe your property you want to buy, the kind of certain things you want to do, the business you want to start. These are all forms part of investment. And part of investment could be things like pensions. And pensions, I know people say, should you do that? I think, there's a case of, okay, you may not, I don't advocate you have to get to a certain age before you enjoy your life fully, but you can start putting some things together for the future. I think that's what we're thinking about rather than getting to a particular age. And that will have something to do also with insurance. When you talk about critical types of insurance, life insurance, there are places you are going to work in that are going to give you opportunity to be able to invest into those things or put your money into that. God forbid anything happen, that helps you. Which is why it's imperative. That helps you to be able to take advantage of that. And of course, part of that is diversifying, not putting your money just in one thing, making sure your money goes into different areas. So these are things you need to think about. So when you're talking about investment, you're talking about planning for the future, really, thinking about what's going to happen in the times to come, and how do you account for that? And it's important. So that's principle general. That's principle number 4, investments. Investment is that next principle. Principle number 5, plan for the future. You need to start thinking about, you want to go on holiday this year, next year. Generally plan for it. That the reason people fall into debt is because they're not planning for what they want to do. Important purchases like cars, home ownership, we talked about, you want to buy a home, start planning the deposit and things like that, start planning. And this you do, this you can see how these are start from budgeting. So with your budgeting, the money that comes in, you now begin to think about how you plan all that. Now you now begin to allocate that to different bits, planning for now, short term, long term, the future, how that all comes together. And those are key things we need to pay attention to in terms of our planning. So your money becomes so key for planning your life, your future, and stress level, and also being a blessing really to people and to your generation. The way we do that, and don't forget we started it by saying we are stewards, of what God has given us. And because we are stewards, the question is, how do we become better managers of the resources and of the things that God has given us? How can we become, and part of that is being a blessing to people. I'm going to end with that when we come to principle number 7. But how can you become a blessing to other people? It is through how you manage the finances that God puts in your hands. And the way you do that is by managing that, you're able to multiply it and becoming more blessing to more people. And these are things I want to take some practical steps around this. Plan your future. For instance, what are the things that's coming up this year or next year? What are the things? Are you going on holiday? Are you planning to buy some things? Are you planning your car? Are you planning to do your driving tests? What are the important big money projects? One of the things you could do is to set up an account, a different account, savings account, where it will be for your project. So the key thing you want to do, you just start saving to it. One of the guys I'm working with at the moment is in his, I think, second year in the university. He's already had a vision. He wants to buy a property when he completes his university education. So right now he's already saving towards that. So he has an account, and what I've asked him to do is set up a fixed deposit account where money is now going into on a regular basis. Does some stuff online, does bits and pieces, and the money he's getting from that is beginning to save it. He's able to save over £5,000. His plan is when he graduates from the university, he's now going to use that money to purchase a property. So he started that journey. So that account is there. He's already doing that. He's already saving into that account. So the question is, I'm going to ask you that what big purchase or plan do you have coming up? What is your plan towards it? Are you saving towards it? Are you planning towards it? You can begin to throw some money into that account apart from your normal savings or long-term plan to now begin to say, maybe I want to start a business. I want to do this and that, and begin to put that money into that. That then helps you to be able to get to that point. Any questions in that? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Principle number 6 is think about additional stream of income. It doesn't matter what you do today, you can always get an additional streams of income to that. Don't forget, we are God's managers or stewards. He has given us, what he's given us is we're to manage and multiply those things. Remember that scripture we talked about, Matthew chapter 25. The man gave the servants, those talents. And what he expected them to do was to do what? Is to manage and multiply them. That's what they actually did with it. So the question is, can you increase in the income? I didn't see you ask the question earlier on. Can you increase in the income? Some people just stay on the amount they're paid and they say it's not enough and they just, that's it. That's the end and beginning of it. No. The question is, can you increase in having additional streams of income? And there's always, especially into this economy, there are more things you can do today in terms of your skills, in terms of other things you can do. You can do side gigs there. You can now do contents. You can create content and put them online. There are other things you can do. There are a lot of, if you look at this year, it's been forecasted that there will be 84 million new millionaires will be created just this year. And a lot of the demographics of people who are becoming richer and richer every day, it used to be older people. Now, the younger people now coming into that stream more and more and more because of the, abundance of technology, abundance of a lot of things people can now do. With the advent of things like digital transformation, AI, there are more stuff that you can do. The question is, with the skills you have, with where you are, can you, whether you're a student or not, can you do additional stuff to create more income for yourself, to make life easier, to meet some of the long-term, short-term goals? I wanted to start thinking around that, because of time, we don't actually have time for me to be able to unpack this properly, but start thinking around what else can you do that will bring additional income to you, either through education, through opportunities, and through things. If you look at the Garden of Eden, the Bible talks about the Bible says the river that flows into is parted into 4 heads, and each of those comes with different types of treasures. So your life is such that you need to think of more than one additional stream of income. As a young person, what else can I do? How can I increase? How can I first manage what I have? Number 2, how else can I increase in what's, in the income that's coming in? So there are tons of things you can do. There are ideas you can brainstorm that can come up, side gigs, side hustles, and things you can do, other jobs you can take on, and things like that. And begin to think about first about investing in yourself and how that can then lead to other things. Let's just do a bit of brainstorming, and then we'll go to the principle number 7 before we close today. Give us an idea. How can you increase your income? What are the things you can do practically, or can we do practically as a young person in England today that can use to increase additional streams of income? What else can we do from what you're doing? What can we do as young people? Let's have some examples. Let's brainstorm. Let's talk about some practicalities. What are the things you can do that can bring in either extra streams of income, additional streams of income, or that can increase what you're currently doing and bringing more money into your bank account? Let's talk about some of those things, practical stuff.
Buying and selling online.
Thank you. Buying and selling online. And let's explore that a little bit. When you think about it, Shopify, with £1, you can open Shopify, right? And with Shopify, it's quite easy. There's a service called Printify. Printify, you can do logos, you can do your hoodies, you can do all this. And through that, you can connect that to Shopify and advertise that. That's just an idea. And with that, every time somebody orders any of these ideas, you know what happens? The Printify will automatically print that, send it to that person, and all you get is the profit. So you can see that's just very basic theory you can stretch. So you can buy and sell online using things like Shopify or shopping carts and shops and things like that. Apart from that, there are other mechanisms and shopping services, Etsy, you can use online that you can actually, explore. And some of them you don't actually have to handle those things. I had a guy I was working with who buys some of these gym kits, these home gym kits where you use for exercising and things like that. And how he does is he does drop shipping. People will order, it drop ship and it gets delivered to him. He wasn't making huge amount of money, maybe about something like on £1,500 a month. However, that's still something, right? So thank you. That's a good example. What else can we do? How can you, let's brainstorm. Let's come up with ideas. What can you do to, even as a student or something? I can give you a lot of examples of people who are either students and things, and they have and young people who have just kind of increased their income, additional stream of income by doing stuff. Yes, let's have more examples.
I think you can work a little bit extra. I mean, particularly for people that do shift work. If you're a care worker, a nurse, I mean, you can pick extra shifts. So an opportunity for you to get extra money from that.
Thank you, Adasha. Yeah, that's a good example as well. Yeah, you can pick up additional hours. So you can say, okay, I want to do extra hours, and that hour, those hours, maybe I then save that, right? Maybe I take an additional 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever number of hours, and the money I get from that, I can then begin to save it. And that money I save, I can then use it to do something else in the future, maybe educate myself, maybe buy a business, buy a car, buy a house, to go on that holiday, that kind of stuff, or pay off something. So that is another thing. You can pick up additional hours and you can do more stuff with that, So thank you. That's another good example. What else? Let's have two more, and then we're gonna move on.
Another thing you can do is you can freelance online. There are platforms that you can freelance. Platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, TopTal, Guru, 99 Design, Design EU, Behance, Dribble, but that is for creatives. And also, a lot of people are setting ring light and shooting videos these days. So you can also, based on the knowledge of whatever you know, you can also start making videos and you become a vlogger. And if you are shy facing the camera, you can also be a blogger, have a blog, write stories, anything that interests you, write about it. So those are options you have, because the online, there are places, there are ways, and then you can also go into things like Forex, crypto, but do your due diligence on all these things and then do
Yeah.
what you like, what you're comfortable with, if you based on your risk, your risk appetite. If you are someone like me that doesn't like taking risk, you know the kind of business you can do. If you know you like taking risk, there are some, and there are the risk, there are the reward. So that's my own opinion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a lot, there. Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff. You can start, trading forex. You can start doing some content creation, or maybe even get listed on freelance. What we're saying is there's so much stuff you can do, right? And with some of those things, you then can get into a place whereby you can make additionals. It may not replace your income, but start something. I think the good thing that you guys have for you is you don't have the pressure of, the world's going to come to an end if I don't earn this, or you can take a lot of risk now. You can do so many stuff now and see what works for you, right? And what doesn't work. And I think that's some of the things you can put yourself in that space, begin to look at what are some of the stuff that I can do. But what we're saying is you need to don't rely on just the days where people rely on just one stream of income is come and gone. But see how you can increase, see how you can do more stuff. I think people are putting stuff in the. I haven't seen that. People, you see how you can do more stuff with what you have and what you can do and your capabilities. See that the things you can learn, and all that. And don't be shy and dip your feet in water. Do something. That's different. Don't forget what we're saying. What we're trying to say here is that, you are God's steward. He's giving you this. So he's managing and multiplying those things. And God is, handed this to you. And that's the thing that God wants us to do with what he's given us as Christians, So it's a key thing for us. It's look at it as financial stewardship. Number 6 is how then do we increase in that? And finally, the principle number 7 is the principle of generosity or giving. Generosity really is about understanding, let's look at that God has given us all of this. We talked about it. So of course we say principle of tithing, which is important, giving, not just giving to in church alone, but all around us. God wants us to be generous people. But you see, if you're struggling and you're not doing well as a young person and you don't even know where next thing is coming, it's difficult for you. So what we need to start doing is there is a principle number 7 is that of generosity, and how you can become generous in all around you. That's giving. In terms of all around you, in terms of in the social work that's going on, in terms of the work of God. So these are some of the things we need to do around that. So there are 7 principles we've looked at, and some stuff people have put on the. Let me check. People put stuff on the. I didn't see. Can I see that? Can somebody read it out? I can't. Okay, let me see. Can you read out? I can't. Okay.
Yes, I can read out.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
One says you can rent a room in your house, which is what I said.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good.
Stanley says investing in company shares for passive income.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Then iPhone says you can invest in businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. So a lot of those things, I mean, obviously that's, talking about creating additional streams of income, that would probably take me an hour to actually just talk about, but we haven't got the time to do that, because in another session I did early this year for some people was, how do you create additional streams of income? What are some of the practical steps? One of the business I have is around social media and digital marketing and all those kind of stuff. There's so much stuff you can do these days to create those additional streams of income and become generous or become a good steward. These are the 7 principles we've looked at. Let's look at them one by one again. We look at the principle of budgeting. We look at debt management or elimination. We looked at savings. We looked at investment. We look at creating a planning for the future. We looked at creating additional streams of income. And we looked at the principle of generosity of giving. And I think, for us in this audience, if we now begin to look at putting all these together, it will help us tremendously to become good stewards, lay good foundation for us, and be able to then move forward into some of the things that God will have us to do. Let's look at some of the practical steps, as we complete today. What do we need to do? I want you, as you go back, I want you to look at your budget again. And then some of you may have a budget, but be intentional about it. Look at what's coming and going out. Set up, look at it very practically and look at, do you have a budget? Can you tell us what your budget, when I tell us, not tell me, but do you know what your budget looks like? How much do you earn? How much is your bills? To the few pounds, whatever. How much is it that, goes into bills, feeding and all the different categories? Do you know that? If you don't, you need to go and work on that. Look at some of the apps and they're happy to provide you with some of the tools and resources that will help you to get to that. If you let Pastor know, I can email you that. That will help you to create that. Be intentional about it, and review that periodically, maybe monthly or quarterly or wherever, every 6 months. But make sure you are on top of what is going on and you know exactly what's going on in your life in that area, and so you can keep track of things. What God wants you to, he wants you to win with the money. And if you cannot win with the money, if you don't know what is it, your life will become chaotic if you don't know what's coming in and what's going out. Some people know what's coming in, but don't know what's going out. So you need to be on top of your game, understand exactly what that is. Number 2, like I said, set up automatic savings and transfers. These days, a lot of things are automated. Make it just automated. Have a savings account, an ISA account. It's easy to open, but a lot of companies the banks and organizations are happy to open one for you. Chip is one of those good ones. These electronic banks. Just set something up. Have a specific amount going in. It may be £1, £2. Is to build that kind of behavior. That good habit of you're automatically saving every month, or every time money comes in, you're saving part of that money. You're giving what belongs to Caesar to God, and what belongs to you. Constantly have that happening, constantly. So you have something for the rainy day, for later on, for projects and things you want to do. Number 3 is look at some of the, we talked about ISAs and investment accounts. A lot of the investment accounts, it doesn't cost anything to open these days. If you open things like, I'm going to talk a bit about that, like HL, that's Agris Lansdowne, they do investment. There's Vanguard, if you're putting in a bit of money, there's what you call compound interest, maybe even £50 a month. What you find is that we compound over a period of time. And you have so much, and the best you want to start is maybe not with things like buying shares, but starting things like what you call funds. Funds, you're investing into all kinds of buckets of things, and that then increase for you. So begin to see how you do that. And then, of course, share your goals with somebody you trust, and say, look, this is what I'm doing, and constantly review those things, and that will help you. Closing scripture is, Bible says, we honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits of our increase. And this is what I want to share with you guys today. Let's have some questions, and then before we have, I think we've spoken for a long time now. Let's have some questions. So we talked about 7 things. There's any specific questions or any specific area? It may not even be in this area, maybe something generally. We've talked from your budgeting to creating additional streams of income. What questions do you have? Let's talk about a few things. talk about, ask your questions before we go to them. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to, I know one of the, it falls under that slide of debt management. I know there's something, I just want to say if you can expand. I know I think there was a point we missed, which was a debt consolidation.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that was one of the parts we missed, because I know one of the options given these days about debt consolidation is okay, gather all your debts into one. But the problem with that is, long term, that might affect your ability to get a mortgage, because obviously that can affect your credit score dramatically. Yeah. So I was just wondering if you can just expand on that, please.
Okay. Debt consolidation, hopefully you won't need to get into that. I think, sharing this at this stage, obviously, hopefully nobody will need to get into that. Debt consolidation basically is where you have a number of debts and then a company comes and says, okay, let's just put everything together into one. It's not ideal in most instances, because what you find is, number one, you have to pay more over a period of time, and number two, affects your credit, like you're saying. So what you're trying to avoid really is not to get to that, but I suppose it's more from education perspective to say there is such a thing as that, where people have a number of debts. Now they're having problem being able to service that. What some companies do is they specialize, they bring everything together, and then they now say pay one small amount. Usually that will be over a period of time, and during that time it affects your credits and affects a lot of things, and a lot of people don't want to do. And there are all kinds of arrangement people go into these days just to help you to manage that. But that does exist, and hopefully we're not going to get into that at that point if you manage everything properly together. But that does exist in terms of companies helping you put everything together and then pay one payment to cover that. But in some instance, they actually will manage that for you, which is not ideal either.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm just assuming this slides will be made available just so we can fall back on it.
Absolutely. I'll send it to Pastor so that that can be shared with everyone. They can refer to it, and then also update maybe one or two things that's not there. But yeah, I will.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering the bit about debt consolidation. I think what the last speaker was also asking is, assuming you find yourself in that kind of situation,
okay,
and you are taking the option of debt consolidation, what is the impact on your finances? And I think this is important for people to know, so that they will know that it's quite vital that we manage our finances well.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. So the impact of that is quite interesting. Number one, for you to get into debt consolidation, number one, you would have a situation where you have more than one debt. You have a number of debts, either credit card and loans and other, other kinds of debt. That's the first thing. Number two is because you have fallen back, you're not able to service or continue to pay as you say you're going to do that. Number three, to get into that point is, once you get to that point, then your credit anyway would have been affected, because then, every time, these are things that affect your credit rating. Every time you don't pay, the credit agent, like Pastor said much earlier, every time you don't pay your debt, what then happens is that it's reported to the credit agencies. And when it's reported to them, of course, then people see that you are not, they can't rely on you to pay, your credits and things sometimes, to service your loans sometimes. As a result of that, it spoils your credit anyway, automatically. And when it gets to that point in time, you're lagging behind, you're not able to get, if you need important things like mortgages and key things, it becomes a situation whereby now nobody's going to want to work with you. When you get to that stage, then what you then find is there are specialist organizations who then say, look, since you're struggling and you can't pay 4 or 5 loans at the same time, can we consolidate that? Can we give you one bill, put everything together under one umbrella, and you make one payment? And that one payment will then pay these different companies whatever that is. The issue you have with that particular instance is when you've done that, then of course it affects your credit all over. Your credit rating is affected, and for your future, I think for a few years, up to about 6 years or so, that is going to be affected. And some of those consolidation could go in for years and years before you actually end up paying those. So it's not ideal. I think one of the best things is once you take a loan, number one, try not to take more than you can chew. So if you are going to borrow money, make sure number one is not just borrowing for things you cannot manage. Number two is when you get to that stage, when you're falling behind, it's best to start talking to your creditors quickly to say, look, I'm having this situation and all that. Because by the time it falls behind for more than 6 months, it gets to a point now where, you have all these shacks all come together to say, come, we help you, and becomes an issue. So these are some of the things. It does affect your future borrowing, your future plans in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's kind of clarified things or make things better for us.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
Sir, I just wanted to ask,
Yes.
exactly how damaging is a CCJ?
The CCJ is not great, So what happens is this: you take out a loan, and you're not able to pay that. And of course, what they do is they write you letters, they chase you all around the place. And of course, because you're defaulted, you're not paying. What happens is you start reporting that to the agency. Then the next thing is they take you to court. When they take you to court, they take a judgment. If they judge, usually they will take a judgment against you because you're owing, right? So they take a judgment against you. That is the counter judgment. Now, when that is taken against you, what then happens is they then give you 30 days from the time they issue that judgment to say, go and pay this money. If you pay it, then they will not record that formally against you. However, after 30 days, you're not able to pay, and 30 days, 28 days, or whatever. If you're not able to pay that, the next thing that then happens is that will then be entered into your record for 6 years. So while you have that, that is very disastrous for your finances, because what simply means is that anytime you apply for a loan, nobody wants to deal with you because then they say, oh, you have a CCJ. Now, it's not just loan. When you apply for jobs, there are a lot of jobs now that you're not even going to get employed. You go and do some kind of jobs, they will check whether you have CCJs. For example, you cannot work in any financial banking organization because of CCJ. Your opportunities become limited. So places, because they just say that you are not able to function because of that CCJ. So you go to the bank, they do a search. Once you get into that situation whereby they want to check the CCJs against you, there are a lot of jobs that you can't even do. So it limits your opportunity, it limits your ability to work, and there are many things that you cannot do because of that. And it will be on your record for 6 years before that can be taken off. So it's very damaging, is the answer.
I've just got one more question, sir, in regards to, let's say, for example, building your credit.
Yeah.
Now, I know, I think previously there was this notion that if you don't have any credit file, then you're good to creditors because they think it's good. You don't have any credit file, so you're good. But how essential is it to have a credit file? And that's my first question. Then the second question is, what steps can one take to actually build a credible credit file without getting too much into debt?
Yeah. So I think Pastor mentioned some of these earlier on, but I'll just kind of reiterate it. And your credit file is important in that, especially in this country, because that is a record people look at to see whether they can trust you and give you money or not. So things like, of course, when you're applying, there are a few things that count. Number one is your stability. That's why they will ask you, are you on the voters register? Where do you live? How long have you lived there? If you live for less than 3 years, or you're moving around every three months, every year, so you're not really stable. So they can't really trust where you're coming from. So now that's number one that counts in terms of lending money, in terms of your credit score and all this kind of stuff. Number two is liquidity. Liquidity is what do you have that can be converted, over the next sort of 60 days, whatever, And the third thing that's very key, is also your credibility. Credibility is how have you conducted yourself in the last few years or few transactions? And that would be, if we give you money or the money you've borrowed in the past, how have you dealt with it? So they're looking at your credibility in terms of when the last time you took loan or credit card, did you pay on time? Did you pay at all? How often do you pay? And that's when you look at credit file, it kind of tells you month by month, they report in terms of how you're doing that. So those three things are very critical in terms of that. Now, how do you build that? Of course, if you're not having any loan or whatever, they have nothing to access you against. So your credit limit, your credit rating may actually be low because of that. Not because you don't have, and they have nothing to follow you, to judge you on. But what the best thing you do is this: you can take out, you still can take on a credit card, and that's why some credit organization will actually give you that. They give you a credit card, you can take that on. However, what you need to do is, usually they give you maybe £100 limit or £200 limit. They're not going to give you £5,000 to begin with. They give you very small, and with that, what you then can do, you can use that to start building your credit. So you can spend £10 or £15, whatever. Make sure you pay it at the end of every month, or before the end of every month. Just make sure you do that. By doing that over a period of time, 6 months, you see that now they can actually see that you're taking out the credit, you're paying on time, and bit by bit begin to see that, they can trust you. When you borrow money, you pay back the time you say you're going to pay back. You're reliable. That is what they judge you by. They know that you're stable, you stay in one place. So if you stay in one particular place for more than, that's why I ask you, have you stayed there more than 3 years? If it's less than 3 years, they want to ask other places have you stayed in. So you're in one place, you're in voters register, you're stable. Number two, you're credible in that whatever money you buy, you're not in default. Your bank accounts, you're paying on time if you have any kind of thing in it, because your bank account will report to you every month in terms of how you're conducting yourself. Your credit card, that's very key. Every month they also report in terms of, oh, you took money, you didn't pay back on time, So whatever is the limit, if you're paying more than that or paying whatever is it that you need to pay, and you're paying on time when you're supposed to pay, that builds your credit over a period of time, and they know they can actually trust you with more money, and that's how that kind of grows. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
Yeah, can I just ask a quick question? I don't know if that's been asked anyways. Does it just closing credit, does closing a credit card affect you?
So could you ask that question again? Closing in what sense? That you're not going to use it again? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or like, let's say you've got how much debt or whatever on your credit card, and then you want to pay all off and then close it to like stop you from using it. Is that bad or good? Is that a good or bad idea?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, from your perspective, give you peace of mind, you can do that. But in terms of credit, it's always good to have something where people can see that you're actually consistently paying. It could, whatever that may be, maybe credit card, maybe something else. If credit card is going to give you a problem, especially if you're going to get you to a situation where you now have to, you become, you have to be using that credit, becomes an issue. Then find something else. But I think generally, if you close a credit card, the other thing is that they have money to, don't forget about the credibility. They want to see that you're actually been, you're using the credit well and things. That's what they judge you by. But if you close it down, I think it's a good thing. However, you should have something where that shows that you're credible on it, especially if you plan to use the credit. That's what I'm saying. There are some people who God has blessed them such that they don't really care about credits. But if you think that it's something that you would want to use in the future for some other reason, I think it's good to have something that just shows that you're credible, even if it's just £5. It doesn't have to be spend £10,000 on your credit card, even if it's just £50. Because what you could do, because you spend money all the time, right? The money you're using, like Pastor said the other time, the money you're using to buy fuel, you could use that same money for that same purpose. So, so you use your credit card to buy that and then just pay that off straight away. That's what some people do. Some people, what they do with their credit card is, especially when you do things like Amex and some of those cards, what they do is you can use those money and the money you're using a debit card on that, and then you have automatic transfer. Every month you just pay off the whole thing. It just shows that credibility. Should you need to use that, what's the name? Should you need to use that credit, it's there for you to use. However, if some people are not disciplined to do that. If you think that it will be an issue and are not disciplined, then maybe something you need to think twice about. Okay, I think we're almost done now. We have less than 10 minutes. Any more questions, anyone? Before we go?
Sorry, we have to, maybe there's a men's meeting, right, at 12 o'clock. So, and because we're recording it, so we probably have to end it by 11:55 so that we can at least save the file, and start the men's meeting at 12. So we have just 3 minutes left, please.
Okay. I think we're done now. Anyway, if you have any more questions, I mean, Richard Pastor will be able to reach me and all that. So we talked about 7 principles. Let's just look at it. Let's process those 7 principles. We'll make the deck available, and if you have any follow-up questions, feel free. God bless you. And if there are any sessions, especially on the additional source of income, if, maybe in the future we may need to spend an hour or so to actually explore, and maybe a more practical sense in terms of how you actually get into that. God bless you. Thank you so much for the time. Pastor, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Maybe one of the coordinators, can we appreciate Pastor Ike? One of the coordinators, can we say thank you to Pastor Ike?
Pastor Ike, we thank you in the name of Jesus.
You are men's coordinator, the youth one.
Yeah, but I just want to say something.
Okay.
I just want to thank him for the lessons and everything that we've learned from, even though it's supposed to be for the young adults, but we've learned a lot. We are sitting here analyzing 1 or 2 things, but we decided not to say anything, but just absorb. So we thank you for your lesson. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
All right.
All right, sir.
I think that has been said on behalf of the youth adults then. Thank you so much, Pastor Ike. God bless you. More grace and more open doors for you, and more knowledge, more wisdom. In Jesus' name. I know that this is just the first time you are still coming back. So, the other days we will probably be doing together. But we really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll get back to you very soon. Thank you. And everyone for joining. I say thank you and God bless you all. I believe very strongly that you've learned something this morning. And the most important thing is that please put them to use. That's the most important thing, practicalize them. And if you have any problem, right, we can get back to him, right, and be able to show us what we need to do. Okay. Thank you so much. Now we will head the meeting so that we can give way for the men's meeting that starts at 12. Once again, thank you and God bless you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
So how do I do?
I don't know if we have to wait for 5 minutes and log in or what.
No. What I'm trying to do is to log out.
Okay then.
Trying to save it so we can send it to people.
All right.
So I can listen to it over again. To save it. How should I just close it? Should I end the meeting, right?